More than 7,000 nurses from 2 New York City hospitals are entering their second day of a strike. While tentative contract agreements were reached with a majority of hospitals under strike warnings, Mount Sinai Hospital and Montefiore Bronx have been unable to reach a deal. As a result, thousands of nurses have walked off the job, and this strike did in fact begin on Monday of this week. Now, this is an important strike, and it has to do with a lot more than what these frontline nurses, what these workers are getting paid. In fact, they have already been offered a 19% pay raise. But this isn't about pay, or it's not simply about pay. For the nurses, what's more important is to ensure that there is adequate staffing so patients get adequate and proper care. And so far, they have not seen a real effort, according to them, from these 2 hospitals in ensuring that they hire enough nurses. So the ratio of nurses to patients is a lot more reasonable and a lot more safe. The workers have been put in the unfortunate position of having no other choice than to strike, said Mario Cilento, who's the president of the New York AFL-CIO, of which the New York State Nurses Association is an affiliate. Now, the top concern, again, for the striking nurses is the fact that some of them end up seeing as many as 20 patients at a time in a single day. And that is too many patients for one nurse. You're just not going to be able to provide the adequate care necessary for these patients to feel safe, healthy. You guys get the point. Now, workers say that they're often forced to work through breaks and don't have time for meals. While there are times when one nurse in the emergency room department could be responsible for up to 20 patients. And guys, that is insane. An emergency room nurse responsible for 20 patients is crazy. But let me continue with the rest of that graphic. So the president of the union says that's far higher than what is commonly accepted, which is usually 3 patients assigned to one nurse. So just think about the difference there, the disparity, right? Usually nurses see 3 patients. At this point, the staffing issues are so severe that they, in some cases, end up seeing as many as 20. So I do want to go to this next video real quick because it's important to hear from the nurses themselves and why they've decided to take this drastic step. Let's watch.
We're standing up for patient safety and advocating for patient rights and nurse rights in our hospital. We have 500 vacancies in a hospital of 3,000 nurses, and that's not enough to take care of the amount of patients we have. Because our patients are not being cared for the way they need to be cared for, the way they deserve to be cared for, and we are risking our license and we're risking patient lives to work like this, and that's not acceptable. And so we're advocating for nurse ratios, staff ratios, which helps prevent a nurse from having 8, 9, 10 patients, which is insane and very dangerous. It helps keep the hospital accountable for when things like that happen, and it also incentivizes them to hire more nurses to prevent that from happening.
And Cenk, just to give you an idea of how short-staffed they are, the union says Montefiore has failed to fill 760 nursing positions vacated during the pandemic. They want the hospital fined every time it violates staffing ratio agreements. So, I mean, I'm curious what you think about this because it takes a lot for the nurses to agree to even do a strike, knowing that it could actually harm patients while they're doing the strike. But they felt like it was a necessary thing to do, considering they didn't feel they were giving them adequate care anyway because of how short-staffed they were.
Okay, so this is another one of those stories that it completely depends on what outlet you read to understand the whole story. So what mainstream media never shares with you guys is the salaries of the executives and how they compare to the nurses. And so I bring that up because it's gonna relate to the staffing shortages in a second. So I read in mainstream articles that the nurses are gonna they're being offered a 20% increase in salary. And if you just read that, you're like, wow, that sounds pretty good, right? Then they explain, well, that's over 3 years. And it's a 7% increase, then a 6%, then a 5%. Okay, there's a lot of inflation, but maybe that's good. I don't know the context, right? Then you look at their executives. Their executives have grown by about, on one of the hospitals, 8.5% every single year for over a decade. And then you look at the other hospital, and it's nearly 13% every single year for over a decade. So apparently they have the money for some folks, right? But still the nurses are mainly not asking, even in the height of inflation. By the way, all those executive increases when there was no inflation, or certainly not anywhere near this level, right? So then, and you go, okay, well, is the staff shortages even that important? Maybe I'd ask for more money, right? So now here comes the context that you need, 20 to 1. Now, if you don't work in the hospital business, like, I don't know, can one nurse take care of 20 people, 40 people, 10 people? What do I know, right? Well, they've studied it, and the studies indicate that in order for people to be healthy in the hospital, the patients, it should be about 3 to 1. You might say, I don't believe in the studies, okay? Well, first of all, you shouldn't say that. Okay, second of all, when you look at what other states have done, it gives you some guidance as to what is reasonable. So for example, in California, the ratio, depending on the part of the hospital, could be as low as 1 to 2, sometimes as high as 1 to 4. Wow, wait a minute. But let's take the highest one. So 1 nurse for 4 patients. In New York, in those 2 hospitals, it's 1 nurse for 20 patients. That's asking a nurse to do 5 people's jobs at once. Now, why would they do that? To keep costs down. And now, even if you pay the nurses a little bit more, but you don't have to hire 4 other nurses, of course your costs are gonna be way down. And so this is not a small issue. This is a giant issue because they're being made to work for like in place of an army of nurses that you would need.
And I think the messaging coming from the nurses on strike right now is incredibly important. It's important to listen to them because they're not framing this as we want more money and that's what this is about, which by the way, they deserve to make more money for the work they do, especially when you look at the executive salaries at these hospitals. But aside from that, the point that they're making is, I can't handle the fact that I am not giving my patients the care they need and deserve. Judy Gonzalez, who's an emergency room nurse, says this statement really stood out to me. Quote, I don't feel like I'm doing a service to my patients. I have patients who grab my shirt and I can't help them because I have to do something else. And I related to that as someone who was at the hospital with a family member who was a patient dealing with a nurse who was overwhelmed. And it creates a lot of tension, a lot of conflict. The nurse is overworked, overwhelmed. The patient is angry because they don't feel like they're getting adequate care. It creates a terrible situation. Again, inadequate care. And it's, in my opinion, really important to show solidarity with these nurses and any nurse that decides that a strike makes sense under these types of conditions, because it's not coming from a selfish or greedy place by any means, not even close. It's coming from a place of actually giving a damn about the work they do and ensuring that there's a system in place that takes care of the patients and gives them the care that they need and deserve. So I love the way that they're framing this. I love that they're fighting for this, and hopefully they reach a good agreement soon. But one other thing I wanted to quickly mention is that Kathy Hochul, governor of New York, wanted to prevent a strike. So let's go to graphic 6 here. So Hochul has called for binding arbitration to stop the workers from striking. But as we know, arbitration agreements are often skewed toward employers and strip unions and workers of power. As such, while the hospital supported Hochul's call, the union rejected it.
Yeah, so I want to go to 2 member comments here because I think they're so on point. One is from tyt.com, that's Boomer Dragon Cat, and they wrote in, staffing was one of the reasons I left hospital nursing 20 years ago. I would walk off the job before being handed responsibility for 20 patients. That's my license on the line. So to give you a sense of how, and by the way, many others have written the same exact thing. 20 to 1 is a ratio that is totally unsustainable, but we gotta make profit, 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 profit. And by the way, these hospitals are supposed to be nonprofit, but they make unbelievable profit anyway. You know why? Because then they're gonna funnel it to executive pay. Over 10 executives at each hospital make over $1 million a year. That's crazy. A lot of money. And especially for a nonprofit. Now, one more member, this is from YouTube now, our YouTube members. Andrew Danielle wrote in, tired and stretched nurses is just plain dangerous. This is not a Republican or Democratic thing, nor is this a money thing. This is about safety. But Andrew, here's the deal, brother. you're absolutely right about that if we had a functioning democracy. And you're also right that it's not a Democratic or Republican thing. It's a politician thing. So look, here's the Democratic governor of New York not backing the nurses, backing the hospitals. Why? Because all of our politicians work for corporations and donors. So they don't care about your safety at all. And they don't care about the nurses. All they care about is, where's the money, Lebowski? So that's the sick, corrupt system that we live in, and it leads to results like this.